Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for White and White Sense, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 27th of June 2025. We were at the Isle of Wight Festival last weekend raising funds and awareness for the charity. We were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, running our human fruit machine. We built a wooden structure which 3 people sat behind and showed a piece of fruit randomly as the noise was made as each person played. We raised a staggering £1,256.45. Thank you so much for the volunteers, and I hope you enjoyed the festival as much as we did. I'm also delighted to say that we have managed to purchase a pair of the Ray-Bans Meta AI glasses. They should be with the charity on Monday, so they'll be available on Wednesday next week at the coffee morning. I'm hoping Ruth and myself will be there to be able to do a demonstration for you. It wasn't quite so simple as I thought buying a pair for the charity because, of course, they come in different size frames and different coloured lenses, and we didn't want people to be put off by having the wrong size frames and therefore the glasses falling off, or equally having any residual vision affected by the colour of the lens. So we have gone for a medium frame with polarised lenses, which we hope people will give the people best demonstration experience. We will also be writing an article in the newsletter about how to actually use them and the features that currently work and the features that are supposed to be coming in the future. Everybody stay safe, and hopefully the warm weather will return as I record this, it is actually spitting with rain. Lisa, CEO, Sight for White and White Sense.
Here is this week's charity news for the 27th of June 2025. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15 p.m. and 2 p.m. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
On Tuesday, our God's Hill coffee morning will be at the Old Smithy Tea Rooms in God's Hill between 10:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Our wonderful volunteers Linda and Yvonne will be on hand to chat. This is open to everyone, so please pop along and say hello.
Yoga is on Tuesday at Millbrook House. This group is now full, but if you wish to put your name down on the waiting list, please call the office.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday starting at 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment. This week we will also be holding our catch-up and feedback session at 11 a.m. If you are unable to make the meeting, please feel free to call the office and leave any feedback about the charity, including any comments that we could improve on.
Our monthly book group will meet at Newport Library next Thursday at 2 p.m. This group is free to join. The group receives a new title each month and then discusses the book at the following meeting. If you would like to join, please call the office.
Next Saturday, the 5th of July, we will be at the Independent Living Show at GGS Island Writing Centre, Staplers, Newport. The show is between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. This showcases Isle of Wight services that support you living independently at home.
Now the warmer and hopefully sunnier weather is coming, our tandem bikes are now out and about. If you would like to book a session, please call the office and a slot can be booked with the pilots.
Another activity on the sea is a trip on wet wheels. This chartered boat will take members out onto the Solent for a 90-minute trip. The dates are the 11th of August and the 1st of September. The cost is £8 per person, but once again numbers are limited, so a ballot will have to be held if oversubscribed. Please call the office if you're interested.
Save the date. July the 30th, our day of celebration here at Millbrook House between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. We will be having afternoon tea and entertainment. This is open to all members, volunteers and supporters of the charity to come together and celebrate the work we all do for the Isle of Wight. Please call the office if you would like to attend, along with any dietary requirements.
Walk and Talk will be on Friday the 11th of July. This will be around Parkhurst Forest, with coffee and cake being served afterwards within the forest.
Our next Eye on Social is on Tuesday 15th of July and is a trip to Bembridge Fort. There is a charge of £10 per person plus transport if required. If you are interested and would like to join us, please let the office know. This trip will only run if enough people are interested in attending.
This is Alison, reading an article from the Island Echo, entitled Arreton Primary Saved from Closure as Adjudicator Rejects Plans. Arreton Primary School has been saved from closure as the Office of the School's Adjudicator, OSA, has announced its decision to reject the Isle of Wight Council's plans to shut down the much-loved school. Cabinet agreed in March this year to close Arreton St George's CE Primary School, despite backlash from parents, teachers and governors. But on Monday, it was revealed that the decision has been overruled. The OSA has ruled that the closure process followed by the Isle of Wight Council was flawed, and that there was no clear and transparent way of identifying which island school should close. It said that the council offered misleading and incorrect information. The news means that the school will not close at the end of this academic year and will instead remain open in September 2025. Nikki Coates, head teacher of Arreton C of E Primary School, says, "Whilst we are of course pleased that the OSA has agreed with us and with the diocese that the process was flawed, our mood is not one of pure celebration. The decision by the Isle of Wight Council to identify our school for closure in September has caused untold damage to our school, our staff, the families involved, and to our local community. I feel sad and frustrated that so much time and energy has been wasted on a process that was flawed from the start. I'm pleased we had so much support from staff, parents and local residents, and that their views have been recognised as correct. The Council says it accepts the findings of the investigation and will ensure that the points made by the adjudicators are properly considered. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council, the local authority, says, "The Council recognises that the process to realign the number of primary school places on the island to the number of children requiring a place has been difficult for many, and we understand that this will be a very welcome decision for the Arreton St George's CE Primary School community. The Council will provide additional information regarding the implications of this decision as soon as possible."
Article from the Island Echo, read by Howard, is concerned with the ordination of Ride Curate Nathan Hamilton. Nathan Hamilton, a former theatre technician and church sound engineer, will step into a new role as he's ordained as a deacon at Portsmouth Cathedral on Saturday 28th of June, beginning his ministry in Ryde. Having trained for church leadership at Wycliffe Hall in Oxford, Nathan will now serve as curate across several Church of England parishes in Ryde, including Binstead, Haven Street, St John the Baptist in Oakfield, and Holy Trinity in Central Ryde. Nathan's path to ordination began behind the sound desk at Holy Trinity, Brompton, during a student weekend, where a call to church leadership prompted him to step forward for prayer, a moment he describes as symbolic of moving from behind the scenes into the spotlight. Nathan said, "I was doing the sound desk as normal, but there was a call to come to the front for anyone who felt God was calling them into leadership. I found myself standing up and leaving the faders behind as I went forward for prayer. When you're actually employed by a church, you feel a professional obligation to make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to. So to find yourself stepping forward like that is scary. I'm glad I didn't really think too much about it, just responded to the call. It will be odd to be up front in a church as a curate. I've never been hugely comfortable with being so visible, but part of being ordained is about living your whole life as a witness. Nathan started technical theatre at university and worked for theatres and churches before joining HTB at a time when his faith was wavering. He's claimed that experience rekindled his connection with Christianity and prepared him for ministry. Nathan studied technical theatre at university and worked for theatres and churches before joining HTB at a time when his faith was wavering. He's claimed that experience rekindled his connection with Christianity and prepared him for ministry. Visiting the Isle of Wight was also part of Nathan's journey. When we visited the Isle of Wight, it was refreshing and freeing not to feel judged, but to be welcomed as a person you actually are. There was a definite sense of peace about being in that place and with those people. Nathan and his wife Alice, who is currently on maternity leave, recently celebrated their daughter Betsy's first birthday. He's one of 28 people being ordained by the Bishop of Portsmouth, the Right Reverend Jonathan Frost, on Saturday, 28th of June. 10 new deacons will begin ministry in various parishes, while 18 existing deacons will be ordained as priests later that day. Further Isle of Wight deacons to be ordained include Abby Lynch, Newport Minster, St John and Carisbrooke and Gatcombe, Chris Nichol, All Saints Gernard, with Cowes St Faith, Northwood, Cowes Holy Trinity and St Mary, Jane Shivers, West Wight. The following Isle of Wight priests will also be ordained: the Reverend Charlotte Hudd, West Wight, the Reverend Joe Nicholson, Ventnor and Bonchurch, the Reverend Emma Taylor, All Saints Gernard, with Cowes St Faith, Northwood, Cowes Holy Trinity, and St Mary.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. New Chief Constable confirmed for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. Hampshire and Isle of Wight's Police and Crime Panel has approved the selection of Alexis Boone as the next Chief Constable of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, after Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones chose him as her preferred candidate earlier this month. PCC Donna Jones said, "I am delighted Alexis will be the next Chief Constable of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, and I would like to take this moment to congratulate him. Alexis is one of the most senior and experienced national and international counter-terrorism leaders in the country. The skill set he brings to this role will pay dividends to us here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight in our changing climate. I am very much looking forward to working closely with him to deliver on my police and crime plan and to lead the force with strength and integrity and commitment to providing an outstanding service to the 2.2 million people who live and work across our two counties." Alexis Boone joined Surrey Police as a constable in 1998, before joining the Metropolitan Police, where he worked his way up the ranks before moving to the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. During his time there, he led the strategic response to terrorism associated with the conflict in Syria and led hundreds of counter-terrorism and national security operations across the UK and internationally. Between 2017 and 2020, he oversaw the operational counter-terrorism policing response to the terrorist attacks in London and overseas involving British nationals, before being appointed temporary Commander for Central Specialist Crime in 2021, running specialist crime and proactive capabilities, including the flying squad. On promotion to Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Local Policing, he led over 20,000 officers and staff across London. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Boone said, "I am honoured to have been chosen as the next Chief Constable of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, and look forward to working with Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones to keep our communities safe and deliver the best policing services we can. We'll do that by making sure we are constantly talking to and listening to our communities and actively responding to their needs. Transparency is our approach." Lots of great work has already been done here by the dedicated officers, staff and volunteers at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. I'm here to build upon this work and look forward to doing everything I can to equip, support and enable this exceptional team to deliver even better policing for all communities. Alexis Boone is due to take up the role in August.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled "Flames Rip Through Double-Decker Bus in Early Morning Blaze." A double-decker bus has been completely destroyed by fire as a result of a blaze ripping through the vehicle on the main road between Newport and Sandown. It was just before 40 minutes past midnight on Friday morning that the public service vehicle came to a stop on the A3056 Newport Road, Apps Heath, when a fire broke out in the engine bay of the Go Ahead Group-owned Salisbury Reds bus. A frantic 999 call was made to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, with fire control immediately mobilising appliances to the scene. However, before fire crews could arrive, the blaze had taken hold, with flames licking 20 feet into the air, working their way from the rear to the front of the vehicle. Island Echo understands the mainland-based bus was being utilised to transport revellers to and fro the Isle of Wight Festival, but was not in service at the time. Firefighters from Shanklin, Sandown and Ryde were all involved in tackling the fire, with the Incident Support Unit from Ryde also mobilised for equipment replenishment due to the contamination of hoses with diesel. 1 main jet, 2 hose reel jets and 6 breathing apparatus were used to contain and extinguish the fire, with efforts made to protect nearby properties. No injuries were reported. Newport Road remained closed in both directions between Morrison's Roundabout and Apps Heath Roundabout, as Stag Lane Motors worked to recover the fire-damaged vehicle, and was closed for the next few hours. Southern Vectis suspects a mechanical fault is to blame for the fire, with an investigation into the cause launched.
Article from the Island Echo, read by Howard, is concerned with the transport interchange projects. Island Road's work on the controversial Ryde Transport Interchange has won a coveted Highways Industry Award. The project scooped the Creating Better Places Award at the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation Annual Awards Ceremony at London's Royal Lancaster Hotel earlier this month. The Creating Better Places Award recognises how outstanding design and implementation of schemes in towns, cities and rural areas improve the places around them for people and the environment. The project fought off competition from national design and build companies and public bodies, and the team collected their award from former BBC News presenter Louise Minchin, who hosted the award ceremony. The Ride Interchange project, delivered on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council, was designed to provide better transport connectivity as well as much improved public space for residents and visitors. The project was primarily funded by government grant from the Transforming Cities Fund, following a successful bid by the Council, Portsmouth City Council and Hampshire County Council, together as South East Hampshire Rapid Transport for £55.6 million. Island Roads delivered the highways element of the project, which was recognised by this Highway Award. Steve Ashman, Island Road Service Director, says, "Naturally, we are delighted that our contribution to the project has been recognised by such a respected professional body. It's great independent evidence that we successfully delivered the project aims of improving connectivity at this busy multimodal transport hub, while also improving the public space for the enjoyment of residents and visitors." The project drew on expertise from across Island Roads, and it's really pleasing that the skills and professionalism we possess here on the island is able to compete with much larger national organisations. Island Roads worked with the Isle of Wight Council and other partner organisations to develop the Leeson Road Emergency Response Plan, was also commended at the awards ceremony. Michelle Love, Service Director for Highways, has said, "It's fantastic to see the highways element of the Ride Interchange project recognised with this award. Island Roads delivered this work on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council as part of a wider package of improvements, including upgrades to Ryde Esplanade Station and the new pedestrian pier. Together, these enhancements are helping to create a more accessible and welcoming gateway to the island."
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Island youngsters on their way to represent England at international dance competition. Two talented young dancers from the Isle of Wight are set to represent England on the global stage at the prestigious Dance World Cup finals in Burgos, Spain, next month. Anya Murphy and Kenzie Madden, both aged 11 and from Seaview, are students at the Hilary Hall School of Dance. The duo have earned their place on Team England and will compete in the children's 10 to 13 age category with their Ukrainian global dance duet. The international competition, running from 3rd to 12th of July, will bring together 120,000 dancers from 73 countries, making it one of the largest and most anticipated events in the dance calendar. In the run-up to the finals, Anya and Kenzie have been busy fundraising to support their journey. They have extended heartfelt thanks to Ride Vectensian Lodge, Vic's Stores Nettlestone, as well as their family and friends for their generous donations towards travel and Team England kit costs. The dancers are also being supported by Isle of Wight ferry operator Whitelink. Sam Woodman, Whitelink's partnerships marketing manager, said, "We're incredibly proud to support Anya and Kenzie as they represent the Isle of Wight and Team England at the Dance World Cup. It's inspiring to see such dedication and talent from young islanders, and we wish them every success in Spain. The girls are now putting in their final rehearsals before travelling to Spain on Tuesday the 1st of July, where they hope to make the island and their country proud.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled Large-Scale Water Search as Man Tries to Swim to Isle of Wight Festival. Volunteer lifesavers were kept busy at the weekend, with a large search operation launched on Saturday night, when a man was seen entering the River Medina in an attempt to swim across to the Isle of Wight Festival site. Cowes RNLI's inshore lifeboat, Sheena Louise, launched at 20:30 on a planned patrol as part of festival safety operations. Just 15 minutes later, at 20:45, the crew were diverted to investigate reports of a man attempting to swim across the river from Newport Rowing Club. With authorisation from the harbour master, the lifeboat made best speed up the Medina and therefore quickly arrived on scene. Festival security reported they had seen the man enter the water but had not witnessed him emerge. With fading light and an outgoing tide, a thorough search was conducted along the shoreline. The search involved Cowes RNLI, Bembridge and Needles Coast Guard teams, a Hampshire and Isle of Wight constabulary RIB, and festival security vessels. Despite the extensive operation, no one was located initially. However, just as the teams were preparing to stand down, the man was found safe within the festival grounds. On Sunday, Cowes RNLI was paged at 10 o'clock in the morning to assist a yacht reportedly taking on water off Calshot Spit. The crew assembled and prepared the lifeboat, but were stood down as Hamble Lifeboat and Solent Rescue had already responded. Then, at 23:15, the Cowes lifeboat crew encountered a RIB with faulty navigation lights and no life jackets during their scheduled festival patrol. The vessel was escorted safely to Shepherd's Marina and safety advice was provided. Miles, Cowes RNLI helm throughout the weekend, has said, "The Isle of Wight Festival is a fantastic event and it's great to see so many people enjoying themselves. Our job is to help ensure everyone stays safe while they're having fun on or near the water. Please remember to always follow safety advice, and if you ever find yourself or see someone else in trouble in the water, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard."
Article from the Island Echo read by Howard is concerned with council tax arrears owed to Isle of Wight Council. Council tax arrears owed to the Isle of Wight Council now stand at £22.5 million, according to figures released by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. £22.5 million is a significant local figure, indicating the impact that continuing cost of living pressures have had in escalating arrears levels on the Isle of Wight. It's known that in the 2024-25 financial year, a total of £6.9 million was uncollected by the council. This forms part of a national total which has now hit £6.6 billion. National Debtline, the free independent debt advice service, is calling on anyone worried about their council tax bills to seek advice as soon as possible. As council budgets have become more stretched, they're increasingly reliant on council tax revenue to fund essential services like social care, local schools, and rubbish collection. However, this has also led to higher bills overall, creating a vicious cycle for many people already struggling to pay. Steve Vade, Chief Executive at Money Advice Trust, the charity that runs National Debtline, says, "Unless changes are made at a policy level arrears are likely to keep climbing. At National Deadline, we're calling for improved collection practices as well as greater investment in council tax support schemes to prevent people falling behind in the first place.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Police make watchdog referral as motorcyclist seriously injured in early hours crash. A man in his 30s has been seriously injured following a motorcycle crash outside Osborne House in East Cowes, with the incident referred to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, that's the OPC, due to the police's prior contact, in inverted commas. It was during the early hours of Monday morning that officers responding to an unrelated incident witnessed a motorcycle being ridden at dangerous speeds along Whippingham Road. It's understood police followed the motorcyclist as he headed into East Cowes at speed. Moments later, the rider lost control on a left-hand bend on York Avenue, outside the main entrance to Osborne House, careering into road furniture and a set of historic Grade II listed Victorian gates. The gates, first listed on Historic England back in 1972, have been damaged. The rider, a man in his 30s from East Cowes, sustained serious but not life-threatening injuries in the incident. He was rushed to St Mary's Hospital for treatment. It has been confirmed that the crash is being treated as a single vehicle collision. However, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary has told Island Echo that a mandatory referral has been made to the police watchdog, the IOPC. The referral has been made due to prior police contact, according to the IOPC. A spokesman for the IOPC has said, "We can confirm that we have received a mandatory referral from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary relating to a motorcycle collision in East Cowes, Isle of Wight, on Monday, 23rd of June. We are assessing the referral and will decide whether further action may be required from us."
Article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Howard, is concerned with NHS changes on the Isle of Wight. The impact on island residents of far-reaching changes to the way local NHS organisations operate will be scrutinised by an Isle of Wight Council committee this week. Adult social care, public health and housing needs committee members are due to examine the Model Integrated Care Board ICB blueprint, a document setting out the future roles and function of ICBs. ICBs are responsible for planning health service for their local population, with the island falling under NHS Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. The blueprint was developed collaboratively by ICB leaders across various regions, according to a council report. Its focus is on improving population health, reducing inequalities, and enhancing care quality. In a document published prior to tomorrow's meeting, NHS Hampshire and Isle of Wight said 2025-26 is a year of significant change in the way we work as an organisation to deliver a more efficient public service for our population. This is all the more important in light of the decision for ICBs to reduce running programme costs by 50% by Q3 of this year. This is in addition to the proposed changes taking place at national level that will see NHS England come together with the Department of Health and Social Care and regions having new responsibilities. The changes in the NHS come at a time of substantial change in local government, with both devolution and local government reorganisation. We are currently working at pace to evolve and strengthen how we work as an organisation and across the wider system in response to all these changes taking place across the public sector. Functions the model blueprint suggests should be grown and invested in include population health management, health inequalities and inclusion expertise, and epidemiology capability. Those the blueprint advises should be transferred over time include infection prevention and control, emergency preparedness, resilience and response, and local workforce development and training.
Article from a member. Many talking newspaper listeners may already be aware that there have been some changes to the stand positions from where certain bus services arrive and depart from Newport Bus Station due to building works which began earlier this week. Stand A, where the number 1 service to and from Cowes usually exits from, is currently out of bounds. As a result, the stand outside the Lord Louis Library, which normally facilitates the number 9 to ride, is now hosting the number 1. Instead, any passengers requiring the number 9 should board at the temporary joining area along Church Lytton. This area may be known to you as it has been occasionally used in the past. It would appear that the target completion date for the relevant building works is Friday the 4th of July, by which time it is envisaged that service should then return to the normal stands. However, sometimes deadlines do slip, so it's always worth checking. Update from Lisa. Upon receiving this inquiry, I messaged Simon, who is in charge of accessibility at Southern Vector buses. I had a chat with Simon, and in future they are going to warn us by email in advance of any planned changes so that we may inform members through the Talking News. Thank you, Lisa.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Sam
and Ursula.
We begin with more news items taken from the County Press and the Observer, starting with an article headlined Council's New Committee System Faces Being Scrapped. The Isle of Wight Council could be forced to scrap its new committee system, which only came into effect last month, and revert to its former cabinet model of governance. New legislation aims to simplify the governance system, ensuring all councils operate in the same way. The government wants to abolish the committee model countrywide and prevent authorities from wasting taxpayer funds on needless changes to systems of governance. The Isle of Wight Council only went to a committee system in May. In a written statement, Jim McMahon, Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution, said, "At present there is a complex and opaque system which allows councils to operate one of 3 governance models: cabinet arrangements with a directly elected council mayor, leader and cabinet, or the committee system. As a result, councils are left with a complicated governance system. This can be confusing to the taxpayer, particularly in the case of the committee system, which can be unclear, duplicative and wasteful, leading to slower, less efficient decision making." He said that the change will provide clarity on responsibility and accountability and improve efficiency in decision making. This change will provide clearer, more easily understood structures at a local level, he added. In response, a spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council said, "The government has announced its intention, but no further details have been provided. As such, the Council is not in a position to comment further at this time. A committee system is where the Council is divided into several committees that make decisions on different parts of the Council's business. A main reason for the switch was to make the Council more inclusive, allowing more councillors to be involved in decision making with accountability shared. Commenting on proposed changes, Councillor Carl Love, former Isle of Wight Council Chair and Ward Member for East Cowes, said, "What has it cost us to change over, and what will it cost to revert back again? Our officers and councillors put a lot of energy into creating a new constitution and system of committee, which will all have to be undone if the Minister's proposals come forward as he suggests. As yet, no date has been given for when legislation could come into effect."
Boy 10 placed in a legal home. Council spent eye-watering £500,000. The Isle of Wight Council placed a vulnerable boy in an illegal children's home at a cost of more than £500,000, it has been revealed. A High Court hearing was told that the local authority paid £29,000 per week for the 4-month placement in a semi-detached house leased by the council, where the boy was the only resident. The home, run by Great Minds Together, was not registered with Ofsted, making it illegal. The matter has been investigated and reported on by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. The council paid GMT 1.2% of its yearly children's services budget for the 17-week placement just for the one child. At the High Court hearing, Mr. Justice Kean said the care provided with an eye-watering amount of money. The situation is wholly inadequate and highlighted the frequent use of restraint and the boy's social isolation. The boy was taken into care last year after being traumatized by domestic violence and was deemed beyond parental control. He has since been placed in a series of legal children's homes. The council was in the High Court last month seeking to renew permission for staff to closely supervise and restrain the boy if necessary, known as a deprivation of liberty order. The judge said, "You could send him to Disneyland in Paris for a month and save some money." Mr. Kean also said GMT is charging an eye-watering amount of money to provide accommodation and support for the boy that is wholly inadequate. GMT's chief executive, Emma Mander, defended the cost, claiming a large portion of the funds were for elements of the council would normally fund directly, such as activities and travel. She also suggested the need for Ofsted registration should be reconsidered, arguing the regulatory framework does not meet the needs of complex young people. A court-appointed psychologist reported GMT staff lacked skills in understanding and regulating the boy's feelings and behaviour. She described him as bored, lonely and vulnerable, and said the placement was not sufficiently therapeutic. The court heard the boy's mother visited him several times a week and organised most of his activities. The judge said, actually, socialising and interacting was important, and simply seeing other children was not enough. The Isle of Wight Council has now moved the boy to a new Ofsted-regulated home. The boy has lived in 2 others unregistered homes since being taken into care in November 2024. It is an offence under the Care Standards Act of 2000 to operate a children's home without an Ofsted registration. Mr. Justice Kean warned the council during the proceedings he would not renew the DOL order, which was first imposed in January, if the boy remained in the care of GMT. GMT claims it is a not-for-profit organisation, the TBLIJ reported. Its 2023 accounts show the company paid dividends to its directors, totalling nearly £330,000 that year. GMT told TBIJ these payments were within legal, ethical and industry norms, and added that the amount covered a 3-year period.
Unavoidable closure of Community Hub service. A charity behind an integral community hub has blamed a sustained decline in residential visits for its imminent closure of vital services. YMCA Winchester House is terminating all school, group, residential and community bookings, leaving an after-school club and men's group facing homelessness. For the past 2 years, the building off Sandown Road, Shanklin, has housed 3-decade-old Scallywags Fun Club. Sarah Werry, who runs the after-school and holiday club, said she is deeply upset by the decision and said it may also have to shut. We are looking at what options Scallywags has to be able to continue, but as you can appreciate, we do not have much time and at this time no options available, she said. So, unless an option comes available, our holiday club will close after summer holidays 2025. Likewise, the existence of Shanklin's Men in Sheds, a group which aims to get retired men together to work on projects, drink tea and generally get out of the house, is also at risk. Gerard Donovan, treasurer, said the group is in desperate need of a new home and hopes an opportunity to find a new premises will present itself. Charity YMCA Fairthorn Group said services at Winchester House are no longer viable due to a decline in demand for residential visits to the site in recent years. We fully appreciate the impact this news will have on our local communities, and we have explored every possible option to avoid this outcome, a spokesperson said. However, as a charity, we must remain focused on our core aims, including supporting young people at risk of homelessness through the provision of housing and other vital services. Philippa Spicer, CEO, added, Winchester House has welcomed thousands of children and young people over the years, creating memories that last a lifetime. We are deeply grateful to all the schools, youth organisations and many local community groups who have supported the site and trusted us to provide valuable learning experiences. The Isle of Wight Food Bank also operates from the site. YMCA Fairthorn Group said all school, group residential and community bookings will cease from September the 14th. The Young Mothers Unit will remain open, as will housing and support services.
Ice cream founder celebrates turning 104. Eddie Minghella, the founder of the world-renowned Isle of Wight Ice Cream Company, celebrated his 104th birthday on Saturday. Eddie celebrated his milestone with family and friends at St Vincent Retirement Home in Ryde. He has lived on the island for 8 decades, setting up Minghella Ice Cream in 1950 with his wife Gloria. The company's Italian ice cream became a favourite in the UK, found in supermarkets across the county and even in Harrods and Fortnum and Mason. Minghella pioneered the use of natural quality ingredients and still trades today. The couple married at St Mary's Church in Ryde when Eddie was just 19 years old. Eddie also served as Deputy Mayor of Ryde, the President of the island branch of Save the Children, and Governor to many island schools. His civic successes include the rebuilding sea defences in Ryde and welcoming the hovercraft service. He was made a Freeman of Ryde in 2015.
A birthday surprise for 93-year-old. Care home residents were treated to an unforgettable day at the Isle of Wight Festival, with one celebrating his 93rd birthday in spectacular style. The surprise outing was a heartfelt surprise for Ken Bishop, who lives at Orchard House Care Home in Newport. Ken wore a hat reading, "Happy 93rd birthday, Dad," and was accompanied by 2 balloons on Saturday. As he made his way through the crowd, festival goers of all ages waved, clapped and sang happy birthday, with one group of revellers even serenading Ken spontaneously. Ken was not the only resident with a memorable connection to the festival. Also in the crowd was Stuart Reid, whose nephew performed live on the Electro Love stage with Reckless, a tribute act to Bryan Adams. "It's a memory I'll treasure forever," Stewart said. "Watching my nephew play on that stage was such a powerful and uplifting experience."
Revellers bask in sunshine and buy tickets for 2026 by John Marino. Tens of thousands of revellers basked in glorious sunshine and music last weekend at the Isle of Wight Festival return for 2025. Prince of pop singer and actor Justin Timberlake closed the show on Sunday, putting in an epic crowd-pleasing set, playing hit after hit, including Sexy Back, Cry Me a River, Rock Your Body, My Love, and more. His wife, Hollywood actress Jessica Biel, was at the side of the stage, joining the hordes of festival goers watching on. While on the main stage, Justin declared, "I've been trying to get to the Isle of Wight for years and years and years, and it's everything I thought it was." He also said, "I've got a special place in my heart for the UK, for England. I have so much gratitude for you. Welcome to the party. You made a Tennessee boy's dreams come true." Over the course of the 4 days, over 55,000 people descended on Seaclose Park, Newport. The weather was also on the side of festival goers, with temperatures soaring across the course of the weekend. The main stage saw performances from the likes of Sting, Stereophonics, Ella Eyre, Ollie Murs, Björn Again, Texas, Alison Moyet, Jess Glynn, The Cause, Amy MacDonald, Busted, Tom Heaton, and The Script, plus many more. Over in the Big Top, festival goers got the chance to see James, Lightning Seed, Midge, Ur, Clean Bandit, Dean Lewis, Superbrass, Alessi Rose, and Example, to name just a few. There were also performances from local talent on the platform one stage and entertainment across the site's other tents, including favourites Electro Love and Intoxicated Tea Rooms. As is festival tradition, the weekend was wrapped up with an impressive firework display after Justin Timberlake's stellar set. Hot off the heels of this year's event, organisers have already announced the dates for next year's festival. Isle of Wight Festival 2026 will take at Newport Seaclose Park across June the 18th to 21st. Early bird tickets went on sale from 8 a.m. on Thursday via the festival website, and the price is right, but quickly sold out. Check out www.isleofwightfestival.com for more information. You can find more festival coverage on pages 34, 35, 36 and 45, plus our 8-page pullout in the centre.
Interpreters help deaf enjoy Fest. The Isle of Wight Festival is for everyone, and British Sign Language (BSL) interpreters ensured that those who are deaf or hard of hearing could enjoy the music too. Performance Interpreting Limited were at the festival for the first time, providing interpretations of performances. The Isle of Wight Festival's adoption of BSL sees them join many major festivals in offering the language, which makes the event more accessible. Lynn, coordinator of interpretations, said at the festival, "We'll be covering around 10 to 15 acts overall, plus any additional requests that come in. Our interpreters are prepared for impromptu last-minute requests." The team, 5 strong, attend many events across the summer. Lynn said, "It's not just festivals, it's also concerts and sporting events. We will be there."
Transport Upgrade wins award. A transport hub upgrade has earned national recognition. The Ryde Transport Interchange project won the Creating Better Places Award at the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation annual awards ceremony on June the 4th. Island Roads delivered the highways element of the project, which aimed to improve travel connectivity and public space for both residents and visitors. Steve Ashman, Service Director at Islands Roads, said, "Naturally, we are delighted that our contribution to the project has been recognized by such a respected professional body. It is great, independent evidence that we successfully delivered the project aims of improving connectivity at this busy multimodal transport hub, while also improving the public space for the enjoyment of residents and visitors." The scheme was delivered on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council and was largely funded by a government grant from the Transforming Cities Fund. Michelle Love, Service Director for Highways, said, "It's fantastic to see the highways element of the Ryde Interchange project recognized with this award. Together, these enhancements are helping to create a more accessible and welcoming gateway to the island." The project formed part of a wider package of improvements, including upgrades to Ryde Esplanade Station and the new pedestrian pier.
New public toilets open after £200,000 investment. New public toilets have opened in Lake, forming part of a £200,000 investment in the area. Lake Parish Council has unveiled the newly landscaped public space off Sandown Road and New Road, complete with upgraded toilets, a renovated information panel and a new notice board. The project was supported by grant funding and includes family-friendly amenities, improved accessibility and CCTV. Councillor Paul Brading, Chairman of Lake Parish Council, said, "Following local consultation, we've been able to install new facilities at New Road, Lake Cliff Gardens and reopened slipway toilets, and we would like to thank all involved in making this possible." The scheme was delivered in partnership with local businesses, the Bay Place Plan, Men in Sheds and other organisations. Councillor Brading added, "With our monthly meetings now at the meeting place next to New Road, we welcome local residents popping along to contribute their ideas."
5 retail chains hit by thief. A thief went on a 1,000 shopping spree, stealing goods from 5 different retail chains. Thomas Mason of Staples Road, Newport, appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday. The 29-year-old admitted 8 counts of theft from a shop in Newport and Sandown between September the 13th, 24 and April of 2025. He stole from W. Hurst & Son, Dunelm, Morrison's, the Co-op and Sainsbury's to a combined value of over £1,000. Items he failed to pay for included alcohol, food, beauty and home products, a soft toy, charcoal, fire locks and mineral water. Prosecutor Lauren McConnell said most of the items were recovered, save for £82.98 worth of goods from Dunelm, £38.50 worth of goods from the Co-op and £21.60 worth of goods from Morrison's. Mason was made subject of a 12-month community order to include a 9-month alcohol treatment requirement and 90 hours of unpaid work.
Bat with very rare rabies-like virus found in garden. A bat found in a back garden on the Isle of Wight tested positive for a very rare rabies-like virus, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, has confirmed. It is believed that to be the first case of European bat lysovirus EBLV, more commonly known as bat rabies, recorded on the island. The animal, a serotine bat, was found injured in a back garden in Shorewell on Tuesday, June the 10th. Wearing gloves, the resident picked it up and kept it in a shoebox overnight, while waiting for the Isle of Wight Bat Hospital to collect it the next day. Donna Street, from the hospital, said the bat would not eat or drink and was very aggressive. It was kept isolated, and Donna contacted the government's Animal and Plant Health Agency, APHA. The bat was taken to a vet and was put to sleep, with tests later confirming EBLV. A APHA vet carried out an on-site investigation and found no human or animal bites or scratches, Defra told the county press. Donna said, "It's very rare. I've been doing this for 30 years and helped over 3,000 bats, and that's the only one I've found with this." She said the bat could have even come from abroad. Although EBLVs can cause rabies, they are not the typical virus associated with dogs. The risk of catching the virus from a bat in the UK is very small, according to the Bat Conservation Trust. This means that there is no need to be concerned if you have bats roosting in your property or flying in your garden, the Trust said. As EBLVs are transmitted by the bite of an infectious bat or by its saliva entering a wound or mucous membrane, the advice is not to approach or handle a bat. Although bats are protected by law, they can be handled if they appear in trouble. If this is the case, gloves should be worn and the animal should be contained in something like a shoebox, while professional help is sought.
Air displays for Armed Forces Day by John Marino. Spectacular aerial displays by the Red Arrows and the Spitfire will headline this year's Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day later this month. The event, on Sunday, June the 29th, promises to be a truly stirring spectacle for residents and visitors. Months of negotiations and fundraising have confirmed the return of the RAF's elite aerobatic team, the Red Arrows, for a full display. The event, commemorating the island's 80th anniversary of VE Day, will take place at Eastern Gardens in Ryde and extending onto surrounding areas. A special addition to this year's commemoration is the air display by the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. A Spitfire and a Hurricane will take to the skies in honour of the courage and sacrifice of those who defended Britain during the Second World War. The Battle of Britain Memorial Flight is scheduled to appear shortly after the remembrance segment of the day's proceedings. Event organiser and Isle of Wight Council Chair, Councillor Ian Daw, said, "Islanders are encouraged to gather and witness what promises to be a highlight of Armed Forces Day, a soaring salute to courage, sacrifice and enduring legacy." The event will also feature the return of the 679 Squadron, 6 Army Air Corps with their Gazelle helicopter. For more information about the event, visit the Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day website or follow them on Facebook. The Royal Navy Parachute Display Team will kick off the event at 10 a.m, landing on Ryde Sands. They've become a real crowd favourite. It wouldn't be Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day without them, said Councillor Daw. The Royal Air Force Falcons will also make their first ever appearance over the Isle of Wight. Councillor Daw continued, "Showing support for the armed forces provides a much valued morale boost for the troops and their families. It offers the community a chance to show their support for the British Armed Forces. The day will also feature various stands and attractions supporting forces-related charities, as well as a main stage with a full programme of live music."
Thank you from school governors. The Board of Governors of Arreton St George's Primary have thanked the school community after a government adjudicator overturned the Isle of Wight Council's decision to close it. The OSA declared the closure process flawed, and the school's governing board responded with delight at the decision to remain open. The board said, Following the ruling from the OSA, we are happy to know Arreton will remain open for families in the area to be able to choose a small, rural Church of England school for their children. We are grateful for the strength, unity and determination of our entire school community. We extend our heartfelt thanks to our dedicated staff, whose passion and professionalism have never wavered throughout this period of uncertainty. Their continued commitment to our children, their well-being and their learning has been nothing short of inspiring. We are also incredibly grateful to our families and the wider community for standing beside us, voicing their support and believing in the future of our school. Your involvement has made all the difference. Thank you. A special thank you must also go to the Diocese of Portsmouth for their steadfast support, guidance and faith. Their guidance and partnership has been vital in securing this positive outcome. Arreton is more than just a place of learning, it is a family. We look forward with renewed energy and optimism as we continue to nurture and educate in our beloved rural environment. The school's head teacher, Nikki Coates, said the school was pleased the OSA agreed the process was flawed. The 30-page OSA report vindicated the Diocese of Portsmouth's stance since the council originally published plans to close 6 schools, which included 3 Church of England schools. The council has confirmed Arreton will reopen for the next academic year in September.
Amazing as a rare plant grows as high as a house. A rare plant that has grown so tall it almost towers above its home has left its 93-year-old owner amazed. Around 20 years ago, Christine Clark, along with daughter-in-law Carol, planted an agave in the front garden of her property in Bellevue Road, Ryde. In the last 2 months or so, the plant's flower spike has shot up and is estimated to have grown to about 20 feet, and it's still going. "I'm amazed how big it is really," says Christine. "At the moment it doesn't look very spectacular because the flowers have to come out. The rare plant flowers every 25 to 30 years and dies shortly afterwards. Christine has never seen one flower before, although she admits it will be bittersweet when it does. It is the best plant I have ever had. I have never had to do anything with it," she said. "It is lovely. I will be sad when it goes." Matthew Chatfield, local naturalist, said, "These plants aren't easy to grow in this country and only rarely flower, so this is an amazing sight. I've never seen a flower spike this tall. Sadly, it might mean the end of the plant, as typically the agave flowers only once and then dies afterwards."
Cowes Primary closure to go ahead, says Council. The closure of Cowes Primary School will still go ahead, the Isle of Wight Council has confirmed, despite calls to scrap plans in light of a damning ruling from an independent adjudicator. Unions argue the school was a victim of precisely the same flawed process as Arreton Primary, which will now stay open, and called for Cowes' closure to be halted immediately. The Office of the School's Adjudicator, OSA, this week announced it had overturned the closure of Arreton, citing procedural flaws. Given the OSA's findings, both the National Education Union, NEU, and Unison said plans to shut Cowes should be shelved. However, the council said they will still go ahead. A council spokesperson said, "The council can confirm that the arrangements relating to the closure of Cowes Primary School at the end of this academic year are continuing, including the transition arrangements for children moving to alternative schools in September 2025. We want to reassure families, staff and the wider community that the council remains committed to supporting everyone affected during this period."
Pub could be turned into house. A closed pub with no realistic future in the current economic climate could be turned into a 6-bedroom house. Jacqueline Hunt has lodged a proposal with County Hall to convert the former Kingston Arms pubs at 176 Newport Road in Cowes into a family home. The Kingston Arms ceased trading on November the 22nd last year, according to a planning statement. The document submitted by the pub's landlord says, having successfully operated this public house for 26 years ourselves, then rented it out for a further 6 years to a declining trade, we're certain it has no future as a going concern. It has become clear that a wet supply only business within a residential area with very little passing traffic or footfall has no realistic future in the current economic climate. Consultation on proposal 25/00573/FUL ends on July the 18th and a decision is expected on August the 13th.
Poor hygiene conclusion at popular pub. A popular pub has been handed a 1-star hygiene rating after an inspection found exposed food in the freezer, fresh rat droppings in the outside shed, and brown stains on the back of the hand washing basin in the kitchen. The Crab and Lobster Inn on Forelands Field Road in Bembridge was inspected on April the 28th by the Isle of Wight Council. The report found the pub's hygiene standards requires a major improvement. Inspectors discovered 8 tubs of crab with a use-by date of April the 26th, 2025, 2 days before the inspection. They also found clarity on stock control was not clear on high-risk foods, and indicated integrity checks were not carried out, allowing for potentially unsafe goods to be accepted. The report also found the kitchen's blue roll holders were unclean, the back of the hand wash basin in the kitchen was covered in brown stains, metal shelving in the fridge was unclean, and rusting and the plastic flaps on the door were filthy at the bottom. Inspectors also found the side of the serving hatch unit covered in dried liquid stains, the extractor fan greasy and unclean, and the light fixture by the steps full of dead flies. The report identified a risk of physical contamination, with items of food in the freezer including sausages, onion rings and scampi all exposed in plastic tubs. The walk-in fridge's flooring and seal were found to be damaged and split, and the shelving in the walk-in freezer was found to be rusty, the report said. Fresh rat droppings were found in the pub's wooden shed storing chemical, oil and waste, providing evidence of rodent activity on the site, presenting a contamination risk. The pub also failed to meet waste oil requirements, and its doors, floors, walls and ceilings were found defective. The report also found the allergen matrix had not been updated when the pub changed its menu 2 weeks prior to the inspection. The Crab and Lobster Inn has been contacted for a statement.
Heartbreak as Gibbon dies. A primary rescue centre is mourning the death of one of its most cherished residents, Xabu the Siamang Gibbon. The sad news was shared by the Newport-based Monkey Haven on Wednesday, with staff describing Xabu as their king and a true icon. Rescued 19 years ago, Xabu was among the first primates to find a home at the award-winning sanctuary, where he quickly became a favourite among staff, visitors and fans around the world. The Gibbon marked his 28th birthday with special celebrations on February the 24th. He was so much more than a resident in our care. He was family, a spokesperson said. He had a beautiful life with us, surrounded by those who adored him. We feel incredibly privileged and proud to have been part of his journey. He was known for his gentle spirit and resonant vocalizations that echoed across the sanctuary. Sabu had been recovering from a stroke he suffered on July 23. We are utterly heartbroken, and we grieve alongside his Gibbon family, Bog, Kajan and Bono, who are also feeling his loss deeply, the sanctuary shared. Rest peacefully, beautiful boy. You will never be forgotten.
And now on to White Memories and Nostalgia, with an article headlined "A Walk in Their Father's Footsteps." Descendants of the Free French Navy, who bravely helped to defend Cowes during the Second World War, have poignantly retraced their ancestors' steps at a historic Isle of Wight site. Members of the Free French Descendants group recently paid a special visit to the Arctic Dry Dock in Cowes, now known as Marvin's Yard, where a unit of Free French Navy sailors was stationed in wartime. They wanted to see where the French Free Navy served. Michel Laws, a group member and organiser of the visit, is the son of Pierre Laos, who was based at Marvin's Yard dockyard during the war. The day we visited, the atmosphere was very poignant, as we were literally walking on the actual ground our fathers walked during their time in Cowes, said Michel. The young men set out on nightly patrols in the English Channel, acting as part of the UK's early warning system, providing escorts to homecoming ships and submarines. They also played a part in defending Cowes during the German Luftwaffe's blitz of the town and East Cowes over May the 4th and 5th, 1942. Michel added, "The men of the Free French answered General de Gaulle's call to arms and continued to serve their country from foreign shores until its liberation." Pierre married Audrey West from Arctic Road, Cowes, in 1944, and they eventually settled on the Isle of Wight. The FFDG was invited by Sam Fulford, who took over Marvin's Yard in 2019, and were given an informative tour. The dockyard still looks much like it did during the war. During their time in Cowes, 5 ships of the Free French Flotilla were involved in Operation Biting, the Bruneval raid in February 1942. They escorted the returning motor gun boats used to recover the parachutists who had attacked the German radar installation on the cliffs between Le Havre and Fécamp. Then, in August 1942, some of the 7 ships of the flotilla were decorated, following their involvement in Operation Jubilee, the Dieppe raid. Sam was very keen to welcome us and kindly devoted a couple of hours to our tour, said Michel. Michel and his brother, André Laos, set up a website last year dedicated to Pierre and his comrades, called the Free French Navy in Cowes.
The website is now the most comprehensive record of the Free French in Cowes. The website also details other operations the Free French Navy took part in. During the Second World War, there were 11 ships and 327 men, including 51 Royal Navy, 3 Polish, and 273 Free French sailors who manned the ships and their base in Cowes. While the nightly patrols in the Channel were carried on regularly, the ships that remained in port were not idle. Although most of the credit for saving Cowes during the Blitz on the night of May the 4th to the 5th, 1942, rightly goes to the Polish Navy ship ORP. Gliwice and Grom, the Free French chasseurs Sauce Marines, who were less than half a mile away from them, also played a significant role in the defence. They lost one young sailor, Pierre-Michel Gilcher, from Ile-de-Seine, who was just 22 years old, while several others were wounded. The ships and yard facilities were damaged in the bombing. The group of ships at Cowes were later to lose more men and 2 ships when Chasseur 8 Rons was lost on July the 13th, 1942, after an aerial attack off Berry Head, Devon. 2 bombs split the ship in half and all hands but 1 were lost. And on December the 21st, 1943, Chasseur 5 Charenton was capsized by a freak wave during a storm off Swanage, while escorting the Free French submarine Roqueal with the loss of 18 Free French and 3 Royal Navy crew. 6 crewmen were rescued. Michel said there are still descendants on the island who have not contacted the group and whose stories are not included on their website, but which can be found by searching Free French Navy Cowes. I'm still surprised at the number of long-time island residents who are completely unaware of the Free French presence on the island in the Second World War, Michel concluded.
And now moving on to my view, starting with an article by Sean Grove, headlined, "Farmers have been busy during June." June is a busy and important month for arable farming, with crops growing rapidly as the days lengthen and the temperatures rise. Winter wheat and winter barley grains are starting to develop and are heading towards the final stages of growth before harvest. Farmers are keeping a close eye out for diseases like rusts and mildew, applying fungicides where necessary. Weed and pest control are also priorities at this stage, with aphids, cereal leaf beetles, and blackgrass posing significant threats across cereal crops. Out in the fields, the first cuts of hay are being taken, and silage making is in full swing. First cut silage is often completed by early June, with silage season playing a critical role in livestock farming. A well-managed silage crop ensures a reliable, nutrient-rich feed source for cattle through the winter months. The process involves cutting the grass, collecting it into cows and baling it before wrapping it in a film that preserves the nutritional value. This method captures the energy from the herbs, legumes and wildflowers found in herbal lanes, allowing the forage to ferment naturally and retain its quality. The wrapped bales are stored until winter and used alongside hay to provide a balanced diet for livestock. Once silage cuts are made, fertilisation or slurry spreading often follows to support regrowth. You might have seen a few tractors and trailers driving around the island lately. They're on their way to the nearby anaerobic digestion (AD) plant, carrying what's called whole crop. That's the entire plant, including the stalk, leaves and grain, all chopped up. This chopped crop is used as feedstock, which is the raw material the AD plant uses to produce biogas.
June also brought a sense of community spirit with some great local events. The Vectis Vintage Tractor Club held a wonderful tractor run on May the 25th, raising funds for the Isle of Wight Prostate Cancer Support Group. It's always lovely to see the classic machines rolling through the countryside for such a good cause. The Isle of Wight sheepdog trials were another highlight, raising money for Mountbatten Hospice. Competitors from across the country took part, including Islander Ben Suter. 52 dogs were involved on the Saturday and 50 on Sunday, with Floyd Farthing from Wales taking first place on both days. The event was a great success, and it was great to see so many people coming along over the weekend, bringing together farmers and families alike for a weekend of skillful sheep herding and friendly fun. The Isle of Wight young farmers also joined in the fun and raised £175 for their club with their competition to guess how many balloons in the tractor. And as we head towards July, the event excitement continues with one of the biggest rural events on the island's calendar, the Royal Isle of Wight County Show, taking place on Saturday, July the 12th and Sunday, July the 13th. It's a true celebration of island life, with farming and countryside heritage at its heart. There will be animals, local food and drink, art and crafts, competitions, and a whole field full of fun, something for the whole family to enjoy.
And now on to public information for a piece by Joe Robertson, MP for Isle of Wight East, titled On a Mission to Close Prank Spiking Loophole. Last week I tabled an amendment to the government's Crime and Policing Bill regarding spiking, which is set to become its own separate offence later this year. It will become a crime to administer a harmful substance to another with intent to injure, aggrieve or annoy. However, it does not take into account the growing and devastating issue of prank spiking other people's drinks as a bit of fun. I have joined forces with Colin and Mandy Mackey of Spike Away UK, who have spoken out about the scourge of prank spiking, where there is seemingly no obvious intent or motive. My amendment would have also made spiking by a reckless act an offence. This would be similar to certain driving offences, whereby, if your actions are so reckless a reasonable person would know that someone might get hurt, the law applies to you. A jury would not have to find specific intent to cause harm. 189 MPs voted in favour of my amendment, including all MPs present from the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, Greens, DUP and Plaid Cymru. However, the government instructed their MPs to vote against it, and we were defeated. I am determined to fight on and close this loophole in the new law, so I am now working with cross-party peers in the House of Lords to try to reintroduce an amendment there. It was a pleasure to be able to speak at the National Care Innovation Summit on dementia last week, drawing on my experience from working for Dementia UK and serving on the Health and Social Care Select Committee.
Dementia remains the leading cause of death in the UK, and I'm keen that it remains a high priority for the government. They should reinstate the National Diagnostic Target in the NHS planning guidance, which was taken out earlier this year. The Assisted Dying Bill was voted through the House of Commons last week by a majority of 23 votes. I'm in favour of looking at ways to try and reduce suffering for terminally ill people at the end of life. However, I voted against this particular bill as I felt it had too many loopholes. For example, the role of a judge to look at issues of coercion has been replaced by a panel of experts who do not have the power to summon witnesses. As a former family lawyer, I find it concerning and perverse that a judge should have powers in divorce and children proceedings, but not a mandatory role to examine concerns around someone expressing a wish to end their life in contested circumstances. Finally, it was a pleasure to visit Shedfest at the Isle of Wight Aviation Museum at Sandown. Shedfest is an annual event showcasing the island's men in shed branches that bring men and women together to promote mental health and well-being through shared activities such as woodwork, crafts and gardening.
And now on to what's on. On Saturday the 28th of June, Focus Fest at the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary at 9:30am. Tickets are £2.50 to £5. If you want to learn more about science, our planet and how you can make a difference, then Focus Fest is for you. the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary, Isle of Wight, Yaverland Road, Sandown. Email marketing@wildheartanimalsanctuary.org or telephone 01983 403 883. On Sunday the 29th of June, Phoenix Saxophone Orchestra in concert at 2 p.m. The Phoenix Saxophone Orchestra from Leicestershire are touring the Isle of Wight, Ralstone Gardens Bandstand, 10 Popham Road, Shanklin. Email whitesax@hotmail.com or telephone 075 44 555 839. Phoenix Saxophone Orchestra and White Sax are also performing at Newport Minster, St Thomas's Square, Newport. Again, email whitesax@hotmail.com or telephone 075 44 555 839. On Monday the 30th of June, Cal's Concert Band, 7:45 p.m. evening concert, Ralston Gardens, 11 Popham Road, Shanklin. On Wednesday the 2nd of July, Crafty Artists Summer Exhibition at Carisbrooke Priory at 10 a.m. An exciting collaboration between 6 Highland artists showcasing the latest work, Carisbrooke Priory, 39 Whitcomb Road, Newport. Email whiteglass@gmail.com or telephone 079 700 25525. And on Thursday, 3rd of July, it's the Jim Thorne Quartet at Mountbatten, Isle of Wight at 7 p.m. Tickets are £10. Here, one of the island's most established jazz groups at the John Cheverton Centre, Mountbatten, Isle of Wight, on the 3rd of July at Mountbatten, Isle of Wight, Albury Lane, Newport. Email lucy.morgan@mountbatten.org.uk or telephone 01983 217339. And the Vectis Brass Band concert at 8 p.m, a free outdoor brass band concert in the beautiful Ralstone Gardens Bandstand, 10 Popham Road, Shanklin.
And now what's on at Shanklin Theatre in June and July. Friday the 27th and the 28th of June at 7 p.m, Island Dance and Theatre. On Saturday the 5th of Tuesday to Tuesday the 8th of July, Footloose the Musical Theatre Strain. And on Friday 18th Saturday to the 19th of July, Jason Manford. On Thursdays from 3rd of July to the 9th of October at 8:15 p.m, Beyond the West End. Saturday 12th of July, 7:30 p.m, Barry Steele, Roy Orbison Story. And New Summer 2025 brochure is out now at box office Isle of Wight 868000. Book online at www.shanklintheatre.com. And one more, Saturday the 5th of July, final Phoenix Choir concert at 2:30 p.m. The Phoenix Choir's farewell concert will be held at Newport Minster on the afternoon on Saturday, 5th of July, commencing at 2:30 p.m, Newport Minster, St Thomas Square, Newport. And the Isle of Wight Symphony Orchestra concert on July the 5th at 7:15 p.m. for £16. An evening of live orchestral music featuring the Isle of Wight Symphony Orchestra, Leisure Medina Theatre, Fairley Road, Newport, Medina Theatre, isleofwight.gov.uk. And the number is as usual 01983 823884.
And now on to the readers' letters, starting with a letter from Gail Grisman of Arreton, titled Mountbatten is Second to None. I have been receiving excellent end-of-life care from the Mountbatten nurses, carers and doctors. Having been initially told that I only had hours to live, then days and hopefully weeks, I was allowed home under their care. We still don't know how long I have, but I have improved slightly, and as their funds are low, I now have to move to a care company where I have to pay £25 an hour per carer minimum. I cannot afford what I need, so will have to have less care than recommended. Our Mountbatten service is second to none. Why must we lose it to benefit somewhere else?
One letter titled Foreign Prawns from Andy Clayton Ryde. You kindly printed my recent letter about Ryde Co-op selling Spanish garlic on the Isle of Wight, the garlic capital of the UK. Now I notice the prawns they sell come all the way from Honduras. Doesn't it occur to them that we are surrounded by sea and prawns are readily available? Why are they sourcing their supplies from far and wide, but not from their own doorstep? Now, one letter about developing harbour in Newport by Siglinde Hoofden. Read Richard Ferraro's letter, County Press of the 6/25, prioritise brownfield development. I agree with Richard's view that central government strive for new build housing with a totally unrealistic target for Ireland is not appropriate, and we should be treated as a special case due to the lack of employment and a recent drop in tourism numbers, which I believe is partly due to excessive increase in ferry charges. The Isle of Wight Council has agreed to an increase in yearly new build housing from 400 plus to 700 plus, which should no doubt be a way forward to house 2,000 plus islanders waiting for affordable social housing. However, it is difficult to see how much obtainable land could be found to meet this need without spoiling the natural beauty of our island. We don't need any more of our villages extended and valuable countryside taken up by developers, maximising their profits by drip feeding unaffordable and often poor quality housing onto the market, which has done nothing to solve our housing crisis. I have to ask what happened to the master plan for Newport Harbour that was approved 5 years ago. Why did nothing happen? If the plan was flawed, why didn't the council recommission a commercially viable plan? Newport Harbour could be an ideal brownfield site to create an attractive urban village with a mixture of social and private housing whilst preserving the historic heritage of the key area. My view is that the harbour could be developed at a higher density than is normal for the island, to provide numerous flats which would be affordable for islanders. This would help to regenerate Newport and bring more business into the county town. It would also help to prevent further inappropriate use of good quality greenfield land for housing development. The Cabinet Ministers for Planning and Housing and Regeneration and Business Development should now work with a coordinated approach to unlock the potential of the Newport Harbour area with no further waste of time and money on an ill-conceived and misguided development plan.
And it's goodbye from Sam
and Ursula.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello.
Presentation of Bill, Secretary Liz Kendall.
Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill.
So, just 3 months after the Secretary of State for Employment presented the government's proposals for welfare reform in her Green Paper, we now have sight of the bill itself as it starts its journey through Parliament. As many of you will know, those proposals have caused considerable anxiety amongst blind and partially sighted people, as it seemed clear that the eligibility rules relating to personal independence payments, or PIPs, were going to be toughened in a way that threatened to exclude many blind people and that those receiving employment-related benefits were going to face substantial cuts. We had hoped to be able to put direct questions to the relevant ministers on your behalf. So we're surprised to receive this response to our request for an interview with Department for Work and Pensions Minister of State, Sir Stephen Timms.
We are not able to make the interview for early next week work, as we need at least 2 weeks' notice to get approval for media.
Quite how we were supposed to submit an interview request a fortnight in advance of an event whose date was not then known, i.e. the publication of the bill, wasn't explained. What the Department of Work and Pensions did tell us in their statement was:
we are determined to create a welfare system that supports people into work and out of poverty, backed by £1 billion to help sick or disabled people find good, secure jobs. We will never compromise on protecting people who need our support, and our reforms will mean the social security system will always be there for those who will never be able to work.
Well, the bill is scheduled to be debated in Parliament next Tuesday for the first time. Although, of course, today you'll have been hearing that over 100 Labour MPs are supporting an amendment to scrap the bill in its present form, which would effectively be enough to wipe out the government's majority if all opposition parties also voted against it. So, high, unpredictable politics then. But it doesn't change what we want to do today, which is give blind and partially sighted people information about what the bill in its present form would mean to them. So we've reconvened our own experts to help with your questions. Dominic Milne, currently working as Disability Income Maximisation Officer with Hackney Council, who has studied the proposals closely, and broadcaster and journalist with 50 years of reporting on disability issues, Kevin Mulhern. One question first to each of you. Dominic first. How much new light does the bill shed on the specific financial consequences for visually impaired people? What do we know now that we didn't know before?
Well, the bill itself, Peter, doesn't actually give us that much more of an idea, apart from the fact that they're slightly tempering some of the changes that they're going to make by adding on a little bit of extra time for those claimants who might be affected. They're suggesting they add on an extra 3 months or 13 weeks for anybody who has their PIP removed due to the new rules. I think what we do know more about it now, though, is through other sources and different organisations have been doing research, we're starting to get more of an idea about how many people will be affected and to what kind of degree they will be affected financially.
And is there a headline there of what that tells you?
I think the key thing, I mean, if we look at it from the basics of the fact that extra costs of disability are what disability benefits are meant to be there for, and we know that the extra costs of disability are over £1,000 a month on average. What that's essentially going to mean is there's going to be an awful lot of people who've been using their PIP to pay for those extra costs are not going to be able to do so anymore, at least not to meet them at least part of the way. We also know that an awful lot of people, sadly, more than half of people who are in poverty actually are disabled or live with someone in their household who is disabled. And also we know that material deprivation is much higher in disabled households. So
Right.
this is going to have quite a big impact.
And that issue of the relationship between PIPs and extra costs is something we'll come on to more. Kevin, ever since the publication of the Green Paper, you've been dashing up and down Whitehall, talking both to MPs and civil servants about the implications of this bill. What's the atmosphere been? What have you discovered? And was anyone talking about blind people other than you?
Well, not much, but when you brought it up, it became very clear that nobody, either in the civil service or in the government, was trying to get at blind people. But when you pointed out that the change in the rules might well exclude many blind people, there was a state of shock. And it wasn't quite said in those terms, but you felt they were saying, these are not the people we're after. The rule they're introducing where you've got to gain 4 points, it's like a fence. The first fence you have to jump before you can get considered for your personal needs is you have to get 4 points. The 4 points relates to the daily living skills in PIPs. You have to score 4 points on one particular skill or other, and it isn't clear that blind people will do that.
Well, we will come back and I will put that to Dominic in a minute, but also joining us is Kelsey Trevitt, one of the many people worried about the possible loss of personal independence payments. Kelsey, just remind us of your situation regarding benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. So I receive PIP at the moment, so I'm totally blind myself, and I receive the higher elements of both parts of PIP, the daily living and the mobility elements of PIP.
And what do you use your PIP for?
It really is those additional costs of being disabled. Accessing the grocery shopping, I do my shopping online, which incurs a delivery fee, because accessing a grocery shop when you can't see it all is really challenging. And I think, there's many examples of those additional costs, but what's really important here is they are also the additional parts of being disabled that facilitate me staying in work and retaining the job that I have and making sure that I can continue to access that.
And that will become important because you are both at work and receive PIPs. And there's some confusion about that in some minds. What would your question be to Dominic about your and others' situation?
I think my question really does hinge on that relationship, right? That, as you've mentioned, for many people, it's not clear that PIP is not a work-related benefit. So where has been the assessment, the consideration of the fact that the costs that PIP covers to cover the additional cost of disability, where's the relationship that's been considered with the fact that that keeps disabled people in work, in employment, in the economy?
I will go back to Dominic on this, but I want to go back to Kevin first, because I think this is one of your major concerns, the link being made between PIPs and work.
Absolutely, like the statement that came from the department, which didn't even mention PIPs, and Liz Kendall, the minister, when interviewed, it blurs and it's suddenly, but anybody who's severely disabled, they would never be in danger. But what does that mean? It's not to do with employment, and they are not making it clear. If they are saying only people who are severely disabled are going to keep it, they have to address the issue of blind and low vision people, and the minister needs to come out and answer it.
So Dominic, is that your sense of this, that this is a major change in what PIPs was originally intended to do?
Well, it is, and also, what's been mentioned so far by Kelsey, and the fact that PIP is not an out-of-work benefit. 1 in 5 disabled people nationally do get PIP, and that PIP enables them in many instances to be able to work. It enables them to either get to work, to use the tech that they need, various different things that they need to buy in order to make sure that they can carry on working. So the actual link that the government are making between work and PIP is a little bit misleading in that respect, because you can be working and you can get PIP, and absolutely the number of people who are going to have to cut their costs enormously, and it may affect their ability to work.
So let me ask you bluntly, Dominic, under the bill as it now stands, would a severely visually impaired person, like a totally blind person, get PIPs under these new rules?
Well, you would like to think it would not affect somebody who is severely visually impaired, because they ought to be able to get a score of at least 4 points in at least 2 categories, including the reading category. That isn't a given, though. My experience, when I've worked for many years with blind and partially sighted people who've made claims, 2-point scores are very, very common. And quite often, to get to the 4 points, you have to challenge. You have to take it to mandatory reconsideration, and very frequently onto appeal. Now, when you're represented and you have somebody to support you in the battle against trying to get the right PIP award, getting a 4-point score is definitely achievable, and it ought to be sustainable. But it's not always given. There is an encouraging statistic that's been given out by RNIB actually recently, which is that they think that perhaps only 1 in 10 of severely sight impaired people will be affected adversely by this. That hopefully it will bear some truth.
What's that based on, though, Dominic? I have to ask you that.
Pretty sure it's based on some information that was gleaned by an organisation called Benefits and Work, who actually requested and received information with a breakdown of different disabilities and what they scored with PIP. And sensory impairment was kind of grouped in with quite a lot of other conditions. So it was very difficult to get an exact figure on that as to what percentage there would be who are getting PIP but are currently don't have a 4-point score. It is very difficult to tell. All I know for sure is that when dealing with literally hundreds of cases over the years, a great many of them will only have got 2 points. When you argue PIP correctly at mandatory reconsideration and usually at appeal, and you emphasise particular regulations, there are 2 regulations, regulations 4 and 7. Somebody who is severe sight impaired really ought to be getting a 4-point score. Very important just to mention as well, Peter, that unfortunately research that RNIB did a couple of years ago found that I think it was 1 quarter of people who are severe sight impaired in the UK are not actually getting any PIP or any disability benefit. And a number of those will have actually tried but been turned down. So the message has to go out to still make claims, and wherever you can, get help, get representation to make sure that your needs as someone who is severe sight impaired are getting represented fully and properly in your claim.
Kevin, I want to ask you this. Who do you think this 4-point rule was aimed at to stop getting PIPs? Because it must have been introduced for a reason.
Yeah, they're trying to get the numbers down. I mean, they won't say this, but they're really trying to get the numbers down. They think the numbers are out of control. And I think the blind could well be collateral damage for the government trying to aim at a group thinking, how do I get rid of people who shouldn't be having it? And there's an awful lot of whispers in Whitehall and in Parliament about, well, of course, we're not really trying to get disabled people.
So you may think this is not intentional.
I really do think it could be accidental. And the only example I can think of was that nearly 50 years ago, one of the first stories I really worked on was when the deafblind were refused the mobility allowance on the grounds that they could walk. So I've been here and I've seen collateral damage before. And what I want to know is, does the RNIB figure says 90% are fine? Does that mean that they know that 90% of people with PIP now will not be reassessed? Because Liz Kendall said that severely disabled people who basically deserve it, I'm sorry, it's an awful way of phrasing it, will not be reassessed.
Kelsey, how do you feel hearing all this?
I think it's unnerving, right? It's unsettling. Something that really spoke to me was the fact that, we've spoken about the additional cost of disability on a kind of financial sense and how PIP covers that at the moment. Something that this whole situation speaks to is the kind of mental and emotional kind of additional cost of disability, the fact that things take extra energy, take extra capacity, and there's a lot more thought going in. This is a situation, the risk of losing, a significant degree of my independence, my ability to access work, to access a lot of other things around me. That's, ticking on in the background as another additional sort of mental load, mental cost to disability. It's not a one-off thing. This has been happening, in the back of disabled people's minds since the beginning of this particular saga and many years before.
Dominic, we've talked a lot about PIPs. There are also significant changes to universal credit as part of this bill, which will involve major cuts to the benefits of many visually impaired people who aren't in or can't find work. Just remind us of what that involves, because certainly in this conversation, it's being perhaps rather forgotten about with the fuss about PIPs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the key major changes are to what they call the health element, which is currently they call it the limited capability for work-related activity element, but it's being changed to less of a mouthful, the health element. That's actually being frozen. That's part of universal credit for people who can't look for work because of their disability or condition. The amount of that benefit is being frozen at £97 a week until the end of the decade. But it's also being halved next year from 2026 for any new claimants, and then it will be frozen for them too till the end of the decade. And what's going to happen just after that in 2028, the work capability assessment that assesses whether you get that element is actually being scrapped. And this is where we bring it back to PIP again, because if you're not in receipt of daily living PIP, you won't get that health element. So they're tying the two together very much in that respect by 2028. So financially, it's going to make a massive difference. Due to the work capability assessment scrapping, people who lose PIP daily living, they're potentially going to lose up to £12,000 a year. And that is £12,000 a year is £12,000 a year of extra costs that they will have as a result of their condition.
Dominic, what a lot of people will be wondering is if there's going to be all this change, what's going to happen about reassessments? Who is likely to be reassessed? How soon? How frequently?
Well, at the moment, what the government have said they're going to do is they're going to introduce face-to-face reassessments. That is one major change.
Is that good or bad?
It's a mixture. In some respects, face-to-face assessments, in my experience, actually can be very, very helpful. One of the problems we have had in the past, though, is that blind and partially sighted people aren't getting very good face-to-face assessments. In other words, observations are being made of them which are unfair, they're inaccurate, and decisions are being made on that kind of basis. So we have a real problem with that, and we obviously want to make sure that improves. RNIB have been pushing for that for a long time. In terms of what they're going to do or how often people are going to be reassessed, that will depend. There is, for years now, they've been trying to put together a severe disabilities group, whereby if you fall within that group, you won't be reassessed. Now, as far as I'm aware, being completely blind at the moment isn't going to be one of those categories.
So it's not regarded as a severe disability?
Well, it is, but it's not sufficient to possibly fall within that group. What they were looking at was a sensory impairment group, so that if you were both deaf and blind, then you would fall within it. Now, I can't quote that as being exactly what the Labour Party would do now. It may be that they're going to change that. They may broaden the bracket that you can to fall within that. So hopefully that will be the case. That kind of detail isn't with us yet, I'm afraid.
Right. Staying with this, for a lot of older people, they will either be on disability living allowance because of the time that they passed the age of 64 and a bit, or 65, and then there are people who stay on PIPs after that time. Now, they will certainly be wondering if they're likely to be subjected to an assessment, a reassessment.
Well, technically you can be reassessed, but one would imagine that would not be a demographic that would be focused on when it comes to making the changes. What the government are really looking at, and they've made no bones about this, they're looking at working age people. They've made the link between PIP and working, which of course, as we've discussed already, is not necessarily one that we should be looking at. However, that's the bracket they're really going for. I would not be overly concerned if I was somebody well over pension age, still in receipt of DLA, for example, because you're still part of the old grouping. I wouldn't be too concerned if I was in that bracket personally. However, obviously, if a letter comes through the post, get some assistance, get some help, and you can be assisted and represented to try and make sure that nothing adverse happens to your claim.
The real dilemma here is to try to be honest with people about what you think's happening, but not scaring the living daylights out of them. Kevin, what happens now? What's the political timetable with this bill?
It's really important to point out that nothing is going to happen with these benefits until November 2026. But the bill now makes its way through Parliament, and we'll have to see what the government says and if there are amendments which clarify things for blind people.
Kelsey Trevitt, Dominic Milne, Kevin Mulhern, thank you all very much indeed. It only remains to say that we will continue to press for a minister to join us on In Touch as soon as possible to give us more detail about how these changes will affect visually impaired people. In the meantime, you can give us your questions and comments by emailing intouch@bbc.co.uk and leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips news for the week commencing 27th of June 2025. In the Newport area, Guildhall, Quayside, Quay Street, Cafe Isola, St James Street, 78 Pyle Street, Age UK, 114A Pyle Street, 10 Crocker Street, Newport area Skips, 84 Hinton Road.
Right area, Aspire 35 to 36 High Street to Union Street, Charcoal Grill 65A Union Street, Michelangelo's 30 St Thomas Street, 131 High Street, and in the right area Skips, The Lodge, 1 Ferry Road Seaview, 11 Hamilton Road Binstead, 2 Melville Street.
In the Ventnor area, Tintos, 24 Pier Street, 1 Pierview Esplanade, 28 South Street, 21 Church Street, 15A Pier Street, and 16 Lawson's Coach House, Zigzag Road.
In the Sandown area, it's 3 Ford Street, 77 High Street, Fields 47 to 49 High Street, 44 Beachfields Road, Pier Street side of building. And Sandown area skips 10 Dennis Road, Lake.
In the Cowes area, Lloyds Bank, 71 High Street, and Cowes area skips 13 Stanley Road.